Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to my YouTube channel, where I help social workers, therapists, and helping professionals deepen their level of self-awareness and to increase their competence and confidence in the profession. So for today's YouTube episode, I'm super excited to have Dr. Apgar here with us today. She's going to be talking about the changes that are coming up with the exam. I know that I've been emailing you all and talking to you all about the changes, so I wanted to get it straight from Dr. Apgar so that she can keep us updated so we can alleviate some of the stress and overwhelm that you all are feeling about testing. And she's agreed to be here to answer all of our questions and to make sure that she's letting you know what this transition is going to entail for you. So Dr. Apgar, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan, so I
Oh,
appreciate you.
thanks. Thank you so much. So I know previously we had did a podcast interview years back. And during that time, we hadn't really anticipated any new changes coming
Mhm.
forward. But now we're in a season where it seems like there's been maybe some talk at the ASWB about changes. And I just wanted to know if you could let us know what has caused that shift and what can
Sure.
people kind of look forward to when it comes to that.
Yeah, sure. So I think the changes sort of fall into two categories. Every 7 to 8 years, ASWB examines the content. They do what they call a practice analysis. They go out to social workers, kind of find out, what are they doing? What do they need to know? And so we can anticipate routinely changes happening every 7 to 8 years. So, the last sort of official content change was implemented back in 2018. So it's been a while, and I think they were going to do this actually a little bit earlier, but just with everything happening, they have completed the new practice analysis and they have the new blueprint for the test, and they have targeted 2026 for those changes to be implemented. And those they can happen any time during 2026. Typically, believe they usually happen at the beginning of the year, but in some conversations that I've had, it looks like the new sort of content won't be implemented until more mid-year. So they haven't come out with an implementation date yet because they're still doing some work about how to integrate this new content, how to like retire old content. So I don't think they even know, but I would just say to your viewers, if you're taking the test in January or February or whatever, this is probably something that's not going to impact you. But those who might be thinking about taking the test, let's say next summer, do you know what I mean, or late next fall or something, we'll just have to keep an eye out, and they'll give plenty of notice. It's not like it's something that's going to happen overnight. But I do want to say that when I say new content, not everything is going to be all new. So, people are always like, of course, there will be things, evidence-based practice is still evidence-based practice. It's still going to be on there. But as you might suspect, since the last practice analysis, COVID didn't happen. So I would suspect there'll be a lot more examples and things related to telehealth, which I'm not saying they aren't on the test, but that will be an emphasis. I could talk more about other, there's a lot more on maybe anti-racist practice because, George Floyd, so it takes a while for things to get in, and we all know this content, we're using it, but it's going to be more present on the test. Now, that's the big thing, right? The new blueprint. But since we talked, there have been some, small changes to the way in which the test is administered. And I actually anticipate that there may be some more happening independent of this, content shift. And so what do I mean by that? So when we talked before, the test was 4 hours, one sitting, no scheduled like break. Now there is a break in the middle where people answer 85 questions in 2 hours. They get a 10-minute free break, and then they answer 85 questions. There used to not be like accommodations for things like breastfeeding and other, so, and now there are. So there are some other logistic changes, which I'm happy to, talk about coming down the pike that are sort of independent that I anticipate in the next few years, like remote testing. They made a commitment to do it. A while ago, there were some logistical issues, but they've talked about remote testing for, as an accommodation for some groups in the future. And I anticipate that will happen as well, whether it will happen in 2026 or 2027, or, I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like the ASWB is really trying to stay up to date with what's happening within society and what's changed in our world, and making the test more relevant to what's happening day to day, as opposed to just a static exam that social workers are going in and taking. But this is something that's supposed to be preparing you to be a good social worker in the field. So it sounds like they're trying to make some accommodations for that.
Yeah, and I mean, even just language, I'll give you a very specific example. So, right now on the blueprint, it says normal and abnormal behavior, okay? Which is not wrong. I mean, that's
Yeah.
still out there. But I think if you talk to most social workers, like I use the word typical and atypical, and that will be the wording that appears on the new content outline. So
Yeah.
again, just not that things are necessarily wrong, but just yes, you are completely correct. Our language changes, and so their due diligence is just to make sure that the language on the content outline reflects that.
Absolutely. Okay. So then in terms of those small technical changes that you said that you anticipate years to come, can you elaborate on some of those?
Sure. Sure. So, many of you may know they've kind of gone back and forth with their testing companies. They were with Pearson, then they went to PSI, now they're back at Pearson. I anticipate that I don't have any inside knowledge, but they'll probably stay with Pearson for a while because, and so because of that, again, I think that probably pushed back remote testing because they had said they would consider remote testing like the SATs has where have where you could do it at home with like a proctor and all this stuff. And so they still are committed to doing that. Now, maybe not widespread, maybe as an accommodation at first, but one of the reasons that they went to the two-hour blocks instead of 1 4-hour block isn't just to be nice to give people a free break, though
Okay.
that is nice. But
Yeah.
when you're proctoring things remotely, you can't proctor for 4 straight hours. And so they're setting this up, so that they would be able to roll that out. And again, they don't have a date for that, but they've been committed to that, which I think is great. So I anticipate in the future that will be an option for
Okay.
some or all social workers. Some of the other changes that they have made or will make, some of you may know, historically, they only gave you sort of the breakdown by content area if you didn't pass. So if you passed, you just kind of found out, well, this is how many questions I got right. You didn't know if you did better in one area or not. Now the unofficial score reports have the breakdown for both those who pass and don't. So that
Okay.
is nice. It's more information. Um, I don't want to say this because this is preliminary, but I'll say it anyway, just because it's
Yeah.
your viewers. But they have committed to investigate whether, and there's been pressure to look at whether people could just retest in the sections that they don't do well in. They
Okay.
haven't gone out and said, yes, we can do that, but they
Yeah.
have said, we're going to look at it and see whether that's possible. And so, I think that we'll have an answer on that before 7 or 8 more years. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if they think, it's possible, but they have publicly, you know, um, committed to looking at that. So, I think they're trying, especially in the non-standard. I'm about to go to a presentation that they're going to do at the Council on Social Work Education in a couple months. And they've done some things on non-standard testing arrangements to make things like more accessible. So, I think there are some people who think we shouldn't have a test, but I think they're looking at just ways that they might be able to, make it more accessible, or they've done away with the palm print, which some people may remember they did this like biometric scan at one point, which kind of made people nervous. They've done away with that. So I think they're, examining their practices to see what they can do, but, still making it a secure exam.
Absolutely. Okay. So I know a lot of social workers with these changes coming up are wondering, are these going to be one statewide, meaning this happening for all the states? And then two, is it per exam or will all the exams be impacted?
That's a great question. They are universal. So there are still some things that are statewide, like, for example, if you don't pass by a certain number of questions and, waivers to sit before the 90-day wait period, those are still not universal. Those are state specific. But the things that I'm talking about, remote testing and all of those things, those are universal. And they are across all exams.
Okay, okay. So, so social workers, because I know when I was putting some social media posts out there, they were indicating like which state they were from. I'm like, I don't
Yes.
know that the state is going to matter. I think these are going to be straight across the board.
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, are any, oh,
Now
sorry.
the accommodations, I should just say, some of those are specific to the state, like, of what accommodations or what they call non-standard testing arrangements. So, like, not every state, you know what I mean, allows for exactly the same thing, or, waivers. But everything that I've mentioned so far, as far as just whether they go to remote testing or, the 10-minute break or any of those things, those are universal.
As well as the actual exam changes like the blueprint,
Yes,
all of those are
yes,
going to be universal as
they
well.
are. They
Okay.
are.
Now, some
And the
other,
implementation date will be universal. So
okay,
if ASWB says we're going to start it on September 1st or whatever, it will be the same for everyone in every state.
okay,
Yes.
perfect. Because I saw someone who posted, like, they said our state has already started rolling out changes. I'm like, I don't think your state.
No, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there's been a little bit of misinformation by state because they typically roll it out in January. For those people who have been around for a while, like me, states might have assumed when they said it was happening in 2026 that it was going to happen in January because that's when they've typically, but and this time they're not doing it then. So I think there actually was some kind of misinformation posted by either schools or state boards that this was going to take effect January 2nd, for example. That is not the case. They may be anticipating, but the actual implementation date will be national, and it has not been set.
Okay. Now, in the grand scheme of things, when we think about testing changes, how major would you say this is? Because I know for social workers and therapists, they're thinking this is going to be a huge overhaul, or they're needing to change their testing strategy, or in the grand scheme of things, how would you measure this in terms of a change, major change or overhaul?
Um, I wouldn't say it's major.
Okay.
So I don't, and I think I'm saying that first of all, so that people have been studying, do you know what I mean, or are used to like, I don't, we're not, what is it, the expression, like throwing out the bathwater with
Yeah,
the,
with the
so
bathwater.
yeah, exactly. So it's not major at all. I think some of the things like that they've been implementing with like the 10-minute break or remote, like those are all I would say those are kind of significant because they help social workers. I think the content, I'll talk about them briefly. Right now, there are four content areas. Most people would be familiar with like human behavior, assessment, intervention, and ethics. They are going to three content areas across the board. They are eliminating human behavior. Now, some people might say, "Oh, great, that was my weak area." But that doesn't mean that human behavior isn't on the test. That content is being integrated where appropriate into the other three areas. So I think as far as content goes, I wouldn't say they're major, but I do think some of the wording changes will assist. And they are, I might say, beefing up, if you will, values and ethics, which
Yeah.
I think you're viewers would probably agree, reading the Code of Ethics was always a good idea.
Mhm.
I think most people did it anyway. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be critical because values and ethics will be content area one on all of the tests. And again, I think we all know in practice that's knowing whether we're doing the right thing. That's an important thing. So,
Yeah.
um, I there will be more topics. They're calling them applied knowledge statements, not KSAs anymore. They changed the name, but they're going to be more on things like anti-oppressive and anti-racist practice, which I think we did anyway, but they weren't necessarily named in the blueprint. So I guess what I would say to your users is it is still a test. The strategies and things that people have used are probably still going to be very appropriate. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the materials, like the code and other things are still going to be good, but it's going to be some of the names are changing and the order and those kinds of things.
Okay. And then it sounds like they're really intentional about having conversations about what's going on in the world, what's going on in society, updating the language.
Always that.
Okay, perfect. Have you been hearing a lot in the profession about how AI is being factored into the values and ethics part, or just how it's impacting our profession overall in terms of using AI for documentation, or is that having any correlation to the exam whatsoever?
Interestingly, that's actually a wonderful question. Um, AI isn't articulated explicitly in the new, I'm writing books now, so I'm pretty familiar with the blueprint. It's not necessarily like explicitly stated, but obviously electronic practice, telehealth, like those kinds of things are. So
Yeah,
I would anticipate over time there will be, and there, more questions on the test related to AI.
yeah.
But again, everything takes a while to catch up, even though they're changing the sort of blueprint of content outline. I
Mhm.
actually have an article coming out about, and I'd be happy to send it. You could post it for your readers. It's going to be
Yeah,
coming out at the end of the year on AI. It's called Times Are Changing. And I actually think I'm in practice seeing quite a bit of incorporation. And those are things like using it for case notes, trying to using it for like again, we know there are what we call AI hallucinations and things. So,
yeah.
it's not super reliable, but I think what I'm hearing from social workers is that clients are using it just like they use the internet to like self-diagnose or to get information. And
Yeah.
so clients may be having good information or bad information. Social workers are having to correct that. So I see it on both ends.
Mhm.
Clients using it and social workers using it, and I think it's going to be a major area of practice and
Yeah.
research in the coming years.
I totally agree. And from your vantage point and what you're seeing, do you believe that there's an ethical way to use AI to where social workers shouldn't be worried about it, kind of taking their jobs, or the fact that it is all in all unethical? Do you believe that there are ways that we can still integrate this in without being scared of it and then still operate out of integrity?
Completely. I totally agree.
Okay.
And I totally believe that. The
Mhm.
interesting thing, I just did something with my students where I had the AI generate something, and these were social work majors, and I had the students look at it and they kind of ripped it apart. And I pointed out that interestingly, AI works well when you know something about the topic because
Yeah,
you can be a critical user. What
exactly.
happens is, and what I find is that um, when AI is generating material that I don't know anything about, I don't necessarily know if it's good or bad. So I actually
Exactly.
think social workers, can effectively use it, even related to just, giving ideas and I give in this article ideas where a social worker asks, what should a new parent who just has a child with cerebral palsy know about the diagnosis and what treatments might be appropriate? And it can generate, a pretty good laundry list.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we don't need a professional to be able to interpret or link
Yeah.
people to those resources, but
Mhm.
I do think it's like when I sent my first fax, I did my first internet search, and I was wondering, I think AI is going to be common practice in the coming
Yeah.
years.
I totally agree. I definitely think it's something that social workers should be accustomed to using and learning how to use it appropriately in terms of knowing how to give it prompts. I think that's oftentimes where we go wrong.
I
Like
agree.
we want AI to do the thinking for us instead of it being, I consider it like it duplicates my thought process. It's like me taking my views, my beliefs, my ideas, my perspectives, and then I'm feeding that into chat, and then it's helping me to kind of synthesize my ideas to make it more clear. So I believe if you go into it with the base level knowledge, kind of like the example that you gave, maybe around anxiety. And I know that anxiety is a disorder that keeps you thinking too far back into the past, too far ahead into the future, and it robs you of being present. That's how I describe anxiety. So if I take that knowledge into chat and have it, create some interventions or,
Mhm.
something for me, I'm using my base level of knowledge to kind of guide it to where I need it to go. And
Yes.
I think the way that I've seen social workers use it, they just say, create me this or create me that without giving it a lot of parameters.
And, I got involved in a situation not that long ago where it can also be good for like generating a quick email or something. Like, here's the points,
Yeah,
but I got involved in a situation where a social worker used it to respond to a client. And as you know, if you're using chat, it says Chat GPT says, and
yeah.
this social worker was a little reckless, didn't proofread. And as you might expect, when the client got it back, and saw that it was generated by chat, it really eroded the, therapeutic alliance. And so
Yeah,
I do think there are some, things we need to be, it's not it shouldn't be used the way you just described. It shouldn't be
yeah,
used, right? But I completely agree that there is a place for it in social work practice. And I think some jobs, like I think it'll be commonplace where if someone's looking for a referral list or something like that, we won't necessarily have a social worker, do you know what I mean, writing it down or whatever. There'll be other ways in which, so I think all of our jobs will change over time.
yes. Do you believe that they'll be obsolete, that our jobs will be obsolete in any way?
No, just different,
Yeah, yeah.
it's I read a book once when I was in college about the invention of the washing machine, and it said that women's work, and I'm not offending it, but
Yeah,
women won't have anything to do once the washing machine is invented. Well, the only thing we did is we just took on, a million, and it's not women anymore, but it's just,
yeah.
so the reality is, yeah, chat will alleviate some tasks, but then we're just going to take on more meaningful or other tasks. Our work will
Exactly.
shift. So I don't
Exactly.
I don't think social workers will be less busy.
Okay, I totally agree. And I'm glad you said that because I just wanted to resolve some concerns. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and they're like, we're not gonna have jobs, chat is gonna take over. And I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen. And I'll probably make a separate video about that,
That'd
like
be great.
the humanization of connection. Like chat cannot replace that. So that's the foundation of who we are as human beings that, really develop us into having strong connections with family, friends, the external world. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. So thank you for that
No worries.
perspective.
No worries. But for those who are, I think we're still struggling, to figure this out. And so what
Yeah,
I would just to circle back with the test, the test is really not, because I get questions every day, all day about things like this. Those are great. I love talking about those, but they're not going to be on the test, meaning,
yeah,
of course, using like if we wouldn't enter client information like identifying or something like that, that would be the same whether we were using AI or anything else. We need to know about the security of the platform. So this any question that a social worker would be asked about AI would be very basic,
yeah.
and things that would apply to social work practice, in any kind of electronic form.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a good point because even though we're kind of evolving in what we're seeing within society, those foundational principles of good practice, those are going to stand the test of time. Those are going to be tried and true. And as long as, how you mentioned about the code of ethics, as long as you're staying in alignment with the code of ethics, regardless of what the tool is, you stick with those foundational principles and you'll always, be doing what you're supposed to be doing. You'll know how to answer the questions appropriately. So yeah, I think that's a
It's
good point.
funny. So I've been in the field for a while, and so actually, what we're teaching now, I'm just in social work, schools, is not unlike what I learned, 30
Yeah.
years ago in my MSW program. But the
Mhm.
difference is how it's applied, and I think that's the point that you're saying. Like I started social work, I didn't have a cell phone. There
Mhm.
was, but obviously now people can't even imagine that, or I didn't have a fax. So the way I'm applying those principles are different. What you're asking me about AI or whatever, it's different,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But the actual material, like
Mhm.
confidentiality and respect to the client's strengths, there isn't, they may not have called it trauma-informed care, but that's been around for a long time. That's not a new
Yeah.
concept. So
Exactly.
I think you're totally right. And I get that a lot where people say, I graduated a long time ago taking the test, like, am I going to pass? I'm worried. You might need to study, because you haven't
Mhm.
studied for a test for a while, but
Yeah.
a lot of this material is, foundational material that we've taught for a long time.
Exactly, exactly. So what I wanted to do now is I had asked my audience to submit some questions that they wanted to ask you directly. So these are related to the exam.
Great.
So for the last part of the interview, I just kind of wanted to go through some of these questions. We can just kind of do like a rapid fire.
Okay, try to be brief. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. So first question is, what do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind when using your study materials to prepare for the LCSW exam?
Well, I think the reality is this is a marathon, not a sprint. And what I get is, the best way really is to make studying a habit. So I'm sure everyone does this like in, a different way, but every morning I wake up and I have on my platform, I have a discussion board or whatever. So I can pretty much tell you, from 6 to 7 a.m. in my time, I'm going to be answering questions. So
Yeah.
whatever time you have, you might not have that time, but you just need to build it in. It's like going to the gym. You just need to build it in, whether it's a half hour, an hour, and just chip away at it because it looks overwhelming, but it's really not. And if you just do a little, you know what I mean, each day and you give yourself, you'll get to the end goal.
Yeah, yeah. So basically trying to maybe have a practice of time blocking, making this a part of your day-to-day routine, not something you just kind of haphazardly do throughout the week. It's like you need to have a structure
I
and
agree.
a process for studying. Okay.
Because otherwise you get on, you look at the book. I get this a lot. People are like, this book is big, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not, you know what I mean? If you just read 5 pages a day or something, or you go
Yep.
on. So you can do this. Anyone, you all can do this, but just make it a habit.
Absolutely. So that means if you're thinking about that analogy, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You take the book and probably create some tabs for yourself that you just commit to working through those specific tabs throughout the week or however often you're going to designate your time block. So not getting overwhelmed by all the things, but just breaking it down into smaller chunks.
And that's true. I'm writing a book right now. So it's just like every day I just say, well, I'm going to spend an hour on this, or I'm going to, or
Exactly.
you don't lose 25 pounds in one day. You know what I mean? You got to, so yes, great advice
Yeah.
for your
Okay.
audience.
Do you think that I'm going to go to the next question, but social workers put too much emphasis on passing the exam to where it becomes a part of their identity if they don't pass? Have you noticed that?
Yes, and I try not to talk about passing, and I don't mean that because passing is not something we can control. That's a computer, it's an algorithm, but
Okay.
I can control studying and
Yeah.
learning. And so I think I get this a lot where people will say, I have to pass the exam, I have to whatever. It's like anything else. I'm just using weight today, but I have to lose 25 pounds. Well, you can't, the way you do that is by going to the gym or eating or exercising. And so what I would just say to people are don't worry about passing. Just
Yeah,
do what you're going to do, make a plan, work the plan,
yeah.
and the rest will follow, right? And but I agree with what you're saying. People do define themselves, by passing. And then the other thing, and I don't know why it's kind of unique to social work, but many people don't pass the first time. I didn't take the SATs once and go to the college of my choice. So when you don't pass, look at it and say, what am I going to do differently? Or what did I learn by that experience? And, how can I alter and pick yourself back up? I
Yeah,
find that people sometimes say, I didn't pass, and then they shut down. That's
right.
not a good thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that perspective, and I think that can be helpful for a lot of social workers. So you focus on the inputs of the things that you're going to be doing, and let the outcome be controlled by the inputs that you put at
Exactly.
the
I
beginning.
don't try to worry about things I can't control. And
Right.
I mean, again, passing is not in my control. A computer
Yeah.
decides that. But what
Yeah.
I can control is how prepared I am. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
How calm I am, my
Mhm.
plan. And so let's try to do that. And the other thing is when I talk to social workers who have sort of like self-defeating or I say, what would you say if a client said that? And then
Yeah.
suddenly their mantra is a lot different. So I
Exactly.
think we have to be a little bit kinder to ourselves.
Yes.
And I see in other professions, whether it's law, most people don't take the LSAT once, or they don't, they may not take the bar exam once. But they're still lawyers. They still go. So we have to just I think sometimes we try to be perfectionists. We want to do everything perfect. And I say to a lot of test takers, most of the time they come to me when they haven't passed, I'll say, I know the outcome, but I don't always know the journey.
Mm,
And everyone's journey is going to be different, but that doesn't mean we can't have the same outcome.
exactly. Exactly. That's a good perspective. Thank you for that. Okay, next question. I think we kind of touched on this, but it said with the recent ASWB changes, what adjustments should candidates make to their study plans to ensure that they're preparing in the most effective way? So it's what you just said, blocking off the time, making sure that you're creating this as a habit, that you um, have a way that you're going to study the material over the week without just kind of haphazardly going into it.
Yeah, the other thing I might say is people love questions. If I had a penny for everyone who asked me to send them questions, I would be rich, right? Like, and there are
Yeah.
apps that have, 4 million questions. I'm
Yes.
not saying questions don't have a place in studying. I'm not saying that.
Mhm.
But I think because it's more interesting, it's more engaging, but unfortunately, no one is selling the questions that are on your test. And I sometimes find that people who, it's really important to understand the concept. And
Yeah.
by questions, you can't always understand the full concept because that's the application of the concept. So I would just say, to your readers, or your viewers who are watching this, is that, you know, questions are fine, but I also, that's why I try to, like, in my, books and platforms and things like that, have also just, content so we can really brush up because you can't get an MSW by just people asking you a bunch of questions. You need to, study
Exactly.
the book or the content.
That is so good. I love that perspective too. So this brings me back to a diagnosis example. So if
Mm.
I understand the criteria and the diagnostic criteria of depression, for example, and I know, what that looks like backwards and forward, when I'm presented with a question about depression, all I'm doing is pulling from that knowledge and, what I already know, and that's going to inform how I answer the question.
You're
So
totally right.
I think the thing that trips a lot of social workers up is the nuance of the question, maybe not feeling like they know all the parts of depression, and then a curveball is thrown in there like this could be
Yes.
depression or this could be anxiety, and it throws them off to where they know what they know, but they don't know the part that's on there that could be tripping them up a little bit.
I would say historically people read too quickly. This is
Yeah,
not a race.
right.
You need to use all the time and you need to go slow. And a lot of times people will say, um, this is a reading exam. I mean, and to some degree it is. I just, in that this is about careful reading. Most of
Yeah.
the time when people get the wrong answer, it's because they rushed, they missed a word,
Mhm.
so if you're taking the exam and finishing early, you don't get extra points by finishing early. So
Right.
you need to go and slow down.
Perfect. Okay. The next question is, what strategies do you recommend for building confidence in managing test anxiety on exam day?
Well, again, I like a lot of structure. That also helps, if I know I'm going to be studying an hour a day or something like that, I don't have to worry, am I studying enough or I'm not, because I have a plan and all I'm doing is working the plan. And it's the
Exactly.
same thing with exam day. I tend to, when I have like even today, meeting you or whatever, like I have it on my calendar, and basically when I wake up, I'm just working my plan. I'm waking up and I'm doing, and it's the same thing for exam day. I would literally have a plan. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to eat breakfast at this time. I'm going to, so you're not worried about what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm just following my list. I'm going to leave at this time. I'm going to drive. I wouldn't worry about, studying on exam day or cramming or anything like that. I would just, get myself up. Uh, no one wants to wake up late, not feel together, you know what I mean? Or rushing driving quickly to the site. I mean, those are all bad ideas.
Yeah.
So just make sure you have a structured schedule.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And one of the things I do for a lot of the social workers, like I mentor social workers, when it comes to job search, one of the things that I say to them is to expect the no, meaning every job interview that you have, they're not always going to say yes. You're going to get some no's before you
Mm,
get to the job that you want, which is okay. As long as you are emotionally regulated enough to handle a no, then you can integrate that into your life and you won't be totally rocked or, have a full-blown panic attack. And I think the same principle can kind of apply for testing, meaning if you go into it not expecting to fail, but just
I
know
agree.
the possibility is there, then you've already integrated that into a possibility. And then you're not so disappointed if it happens. It's like I already prepared that this was something that could happen. And based off that, I have a strategy of what I can do next if that possibility presents itself. So
I
you're
love that.
setting yourself up for failure by not considering that possibility.
I love that. It's like you said you liked what I said. I love what you're saying because I also think it gets you, like sometimes social workers will say, I failed, I was shocked, or whatever. I don't think that kind of shows me that maybe they weren't up for the fight, if you will, or the struggle, because if it wasn't a struggle, like I say during the test, we wouldn't have an exam. If anyone could pass this, why have an exam, right? Like it's not, so I get myself up on that, it's game day, if you will. I'm up
Yeah,
for the struggle, but in a positive way.
right.
I'm up for this. I can do this,
Mhm.
but I also know it's not going to be easy. There's going to
Right.
be lots of questions that are going to be a little ambiguous. That's okay. That's normal.
Mhm.
And I love what you're saying. Like, this isn't going to come easy, and I'm prepared for that.
Here. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, the last question is, how might these changes affect diverse candidates? And what advice would you offer for someone from unrepresented backgrounds?
So it's like the doorknob disclosure. You asked me the hardest question at the end. Um, so I mean, there's a lot to say about the disparities, and this is, not an easy. Listen, if it was easy to untangle this, we would have, figured it all out by now.
Mhm.
Um, I think, and I see this, it's not unlike any kind of testing. The people who might need the resources and the prep and the time the most are, sometimes oppressed and marginalized and have the least access.
Right.
So, what I would say is, uh, you know, even if you're holding, and I hate to say this because it's hard, even if you're holding like multiple jobs and you have a lot of responsibilities or whatever, you're gonna have to make some time. So I say that, often people, they have to work a lot.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And so it's hard to tell somebody who has two full-time jobs, do you know what I mean, to carve out
Yeah.
time. Uh,
Absolutely.
There are a lot of, and YouTube, I mean, there are a lot of free resources out there. Um, I know my university has my books and things like that. So go to your university library. If you're an MSW student, a lot of these study guides, or ask your university to purchase them. I know there are, so that they can be free,
Yeah,
which is good. I see a lot of MSW since the disparity, data has come out. I do see a lot of like historically Black colleges and universities and others incorporating test prep for free, like
yeah,
into their curricula. And so I would just say, try to get groups, do you know what I mean, to sponsor these kinds of programs,
yeah,
so that you don't have to bear the cost alone.
yeah,
But I'm gonna end on something, positive in that I think the groups, whether it's social workers of color, those with disabilities, older,
mhm,
they have fought historically. This is these disparities are not, new in life. And
yeah,
so I don't want people to feel that they're alone. I
yeah,
don't want them to think that they can't do it, because we see, sometimes I think that data has sometimes discouraged people, that it shouldn't be that way. It
yeah,
just, it just shows that, and we see this in other, this is not new, but we see this in other professions that, reach out.
yeah,
I get emails all the time, from people, just, reach out to others who have done it and
yeah.
find out how they've done it, and you can do this.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that, especially when you're speaking specifically about marginalized communities. One of the things that marginalized communities do well is we exist in community. Like, community is always the foundation of how we get things done, how we move forward, how we push forward a movement, how we identify ourselves. So I don't think if you identify as a marginalized group, get in community with someone else who identifies within that community so you all can talk about the challenges, like what Dr. Apgar said, brainstorm with other people about what they're doing, get in Facebook groups, identify resources within those Facebook groups that can help provide support. I know that there have been a lot of social workers on TikTok who've offered to pay for the licensing exam for a lot of different social workers. So don't operate in isolation, get in community, get in a group, connect with a YouTuber, a TikToker, myself, just stay in community, stay open and talk. Don't allow this to kind of overtake you to overthink and to stay in your own head, and don't reach out for help and support. So thank you
I'm
for that.
seeing more incorporation into MSW programs too, which I'm really encouraged about, because I think we've had trouble as people have graduated and then they've tried to struggle on their own with the
Yeah,
test. And
yeah,
that's a bad place to put, a new practitioner. And we have to do better. And so, for those of you that are students, make sure as far as community, use your fellow student groups, and even alumni or whatever, lean back into your programs, or again, lots of other online resources. But I think mainly just you're not alone, and you can do this.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for those insights. Is there anything else that you want to share, maybe about your upcoming book or
Well, I'm obviously I'm writing guides, and then we'll have the online platform for the new 2026 blueprint. And so, I don't know when it's coming out either, but books don't just appear, so we have to get ready. And then, just I'm doing a lot of other, research, as I said, about like AI and social work education and what that looks like. And we have a lot more DSWs, and how is the accreditation of doctorates impacting the profession. So I'm known for my test prep, but I try to stay really on the cutting edge of what's happening out there in regulation, practice, and education. So I just invite, first of all, thank you for having me, but I just invite all of you, if you're seeing a trend, or reach out. You can Google me, you'll see my university profile, send me an email. But this is an invitation, because I like you said, we're all in this in community, and we're not going to figure this out alone.
Yes. Now, do you happen to have any upcoming test prep that you can send
I
over?
do it all over. Mostly I do it through schools or, again, I'm not, this is, not necessarily business. But I do it through the National Association. So NASW chapters, I would say just in general, NASW chapters in pretty much every state I'm affiliated with. And I do courses through them. And then I also work with, a lot of the bigger schools, that have their own test preps, or even like large organizations. I'm in the New Jersey, New York area, so I've worked, with some union groups and things like that. So, but all of my books have a digital access, and really that's where community is. Like I do a live class every month through that platform. So, you know, um, I'm not a TikToker. I'm a
Okay.
consumer, but I don't have my own channel yet. But I don't know if I ever will. But I enjoy those that do.
Yeah.
So just again, reach out and feel free to again. I'm always interested in your ideas. A couple people reached out about things that they thought were needed to be in my book in the last edition, so I'm incorporating those. So uh, you know, we grow by talking to one another. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. When will your book be done? Do you have a time frame?
By the it definitely we're working on the master's, copy editing it right now. It's and then the clinical and then the bachelor's, they'll roll out in that sequence, but definitely by the end of the year they'll be out.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Apgar. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you for
Thank you for
taking the
all you
time out.
do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, everyone, this link will be available for you through my email list. For those of you who are already on my email list, you'll get the first access to the interview. I hope you all found this helpful. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Apgar, for being here with me today. And thank you all so much for watching. And as always, be well.